So we're going to jump back into Peter Sewell's testimony to the Post Office Horizon IT inquiry, and he's being shown a watered-down change request following a meeting he was involved with a few others on the Royal Mail Group account at Fujitsu. And essentially, the watered-down document is proposed to kind of make it, I don't know, less intensive. But when you compare the documents side by side, the only thing that's watered down in it, or completely removed, is the risks of the current manual-based system to suggest that it's error-prone and the consequence of not approving the change request, notably that they would need to water down the witness statements. Apart from that, the technical process that is currently involved with providing ARQ data for Legacy Horizon and the proposed change request to Horizon Online to fix it are substantively the same. So it's hard to see how any costs or time are saved by removing only the criticism and not actually changing the parameters of either of the processes or the change request. At this point, Peter Sewell is pointedly asked what is the point of his job, because all he seems to be doing is listening to people and not really doing anything. Let's jump into the inquiry.
Can we please look at FUJ 001-55276? Thank you. If we look at the bottom email, there seems to have been a meeting on the 15th of October, and it says this is follow-up to today's meeting, minutes of which are roughly below. So it provides the minutes of the meeting of the 15th of October from somebody called Steve Evans. Who was Steve Evans?
I think he was a technical person from SSC.
And he says there, towards the bottom, he says, however, the real cost of this development, or rather of not doing it, is the potential for mistakes, especially by a new resource without the experience of SM, to be made in a manual process which uses data so far abstracted from the original source, which is the proposed new wording for the CP. If we scroll up, please, up, we have Alan Holmes sending a new version of the change proposal to yourself and others, and he says, as discussed at the last meeting, I have watered down the proposed change proposal, copy attached. Are you able to assist us with what was meant by watered down?
I don't recall.
So they've got a manual process which is prone to error and is costing them too much. They don't want to fix it in Legacy Horizon because that costs too much. They're proposing to fix it in Horizon Online, which is upcoming, but now it seems that's too onerous. Surely the big onerous thing that they're missing here is getting this wrong and having all these claims against them potentially in the future for flawed data being used to chase people through the courts is the biggest risk of all that they seem to have not identified or considered so far.
The change proposal appears on the next page, so if we could go to page 2, please. This is the version that he described as watered down. Could I ask for it to be brought up side by side with the earlier version, which is FUJ 001-55272, and it should be the first page of that document, 55272. Thank you very much. So that's the earlier version on the right-hand side and the watered-down version on the left-hand side. We see there at the bottom, on the left-hand side, it now says the current Horizon tactical solution is a largely manual process, the operation of which is reliant on a few key individuals. Whilst we believe that we will have to live with a tactical solution for the remaining life of the Horizon audit system, a permanent solution for the Horizon Online audit solution is required. In outline, this will require the following. What has been removed from this version, we can see on the right-hand side, is the number of deficiencies that were identified on the right-hand side.
How does that water down the solution or the costs or resource required for it, basically saying removing the faults, shall we suggest, with the original process? It seems like it's just shoring up their opinion of the tactical process that's deployed, rather than actually either removing anything from the tactical process to make it less onerous, or indeed, so far, removing anything from the change proposal.
Reference to, for example, the manual process being error-prone does not appear on this watered-down version. Do you see that?
Yes.
If we, on the left-hand side, turn to page 4, please, and on the right-hand side, turn to page 3, we have their consequences if not approved. Now, we saw on the right-hand side reference to, for example, that final bullet point in the first box, data integrity issues inherent with the current process need to be addressed by weakening the content of the witness statement. That no longer is included in the watered-down version on the left-hand side. It says, instead, we are obliged to present and vouch for the integrity of audit data that is fit for purpose, i.e. admissible as evidence in court. If this change is not approved, we will need to continue operating the current Horizon tactical process for the lifetime of HNGX. So data integrity issues inherent with the current process no longer appears.
And in fact, any criticism of the current process disappears from that. It's not saying that they won't have to produce witness statements. So again, it's hard to see how this watering down actually removes any of the time or costs associated with the change request, either with approving it or not approving it, but more just removes the criticism of their own process and the potential failures of the tactical process if it's continued.
Do you recall discussion at this meeting about watering down that version on the right-hand side?
No, that's the design authority that's decided to do that.
When you say that that's a design authority, what do you mean by that?
Alan Holmes.
Alan Holmes. So we saw on the front, if we stick with the left-hand side perhaps, and look at page 2 on the left-hand side, the one on the right-hand side can come away. We have Alan Holmes there as the originator, but we have yourself as the change owner.
Mm-hmm.
Are we to understand from your evidence that despite being the change owner, that wasn't something that was discussed with you?
I would listen to the technical sponsor, the originator, the same person, and if that was their wording, I would go along with it.
Mr. Sewell, your evidence so far about witness statements, for example, was I didn't look at witness statements, I wasn't involved in them. Your evidence about the change proposal, of which you're named as the change owner, mm-hmm. is effectively I would have just seen what those with greater knowledge did. I would have approved it. Some people might be struggling to understand quite what you did. What did you see as your role, if not to get involved in things like witness statements, or if not to get involved in something where you are named as the change owner?
I relied on other people with the technical knowledge to give me the advice.
You may have relied on other people, but don't you think as manager of your team, the team that was assisting with the prosecution of sub-postmaster, do you not think that you should have been more involved in the detail?
I'm the change owner here. I'm not the originator of this CP.
But if you're the owner of it, surely that means you're managing it, you're responsible for it. Yeah, I appreciate you might have technical people working on it, but it's a bit like in the case of a software development project. You might have a developer or a development lead in charge, or the technical sponsor, if you like, of a change request, but ultimately the person with business responsibility for it would be the change owner, which would usually be a project manager. And we know Peter Sewell was a project manager / security operations manager. So you're the owner of it, and it's your responsibility to speak to all the people and keep the team moving in the right direction and take accountability for decisions and provide updates and things like that, surely.
Owner by default because I was in the security team, and it's a security change proposal.
If we look at the covering emails, that's on page 1, there are very few people who are involved in this. There is a meeting after meeting taking place about this issue. You're named there as a senior individual, as a recipient from Mr. Holmes, circulating a document that was discussed at the last meeting. Do you not think that you should have played more of a role in this significant issue?
I played a role in the issue.
Do you not think that you should have got down into the detail of what was going on, given your team's role with regard to the prosecution of sub-postmasters?
My detailed knowledge was limited, so I couldn't get any more involved than I did.
But you had seen documents that relate to concerns about the integrity of the data. Mm-hmm. Should you not have been more concerned?
I would always listen to the technical authority to advise me.
You may have...
Well, they've highlighted there, though, haven't they, that they've got major concerns, at least in the original process. They've called it error-prone. I mean, you don't have to be technical to understand what error-prone or prone to error is, and that the worries that if this tactical process continues, the current tactical process has several deficiencies that are highlighted in it as a reason why the change request shouldn't be rejected for Horizon Online, and why witness statements can't carry on in their current form because there's a problem with them. Surely, I mean, you don't have to be technical for that to raise issue with you. And certainly from my experience of software development projects, whilst the technical issues do rely with the technical team, technical sponsor, development lead, senior developer, whatever you want to call them, they're not going to be focused on the business issues and the impacts of that and the potential consequences for that at a business point of view. They might be aware and you might rope them in for some involvement, but again, the project manager would be the one you are expecting to take control of that and be deciding upon those issues, referring them on as necessary upwards, and handling the day-to-day business impacts of what the technical change required is and the potential consequences. That's managing the project, isn't it?
I've always listened to people, but people may be asking why you weren't doing more about it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you've seen, for example, concerns about data integrity.
Yes.
You are managing a team that provides witness statements in criminal prosecutions and civil claims against sub-postmasters. Why weren't you raising this at the highest levels? Why weren't you getting more involved in resolving the issues and ensuring the integrity of the data that Fujitsu were providing to the court that led to people's prosecutions?
This was at the highest level. This is Alan Holmes, the design authority for the audit system.
Are there no higher levels within Fujitsu in the United Kingdom?
I guess there would have been, yes.
Yeah, so Alan Holmes was the highest level as far as you were concerned that this was being raised with.
Regarding the audit system, yes.
And you didn't see it as your job, as the person managing the team that was involved in criminal prosecutions, to do anything more than you were doing?
I did what was necessary.
And what was necessary?
I listened to Alan Holmes and took his recommendations.
But again, listening to people, what are you actually doing though? I guess they're trying to get to the nub of what was your job function there? Because if you're just listening to people, presumably they can do what they're doing without you listening then, if you're not involved really at any substantive level.
And that was the limits of your job, was it?
Regarding the audit, yes. On this occasion, yes.